Oi oi, it's your boy Jack Slack, and today we're going to be talking about this chap here, defending the single leg right now, Jon Jones. He's got a fight coming up. It's not a particularly interesting one, but this move here, something that Jones is famous for, the standing arm crank or the Mir Lock. He's going to use this overhook he's got here to force Glover to share his elbow inside of the line of his shoulder and wrench it as far as he can. Boom, that's not good. That does some damage. It can do the elbow, it can do the shoulder. It's called the Mir Lock because Frank Mir made it famous, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of it, where it's at in grappling, how Jon Jones uses it, and then we'll link that in a little bit with Jon Jones's dirty boxing, and hopefully that'll bring us to like 5-10 minutes. So, the Mir Lock was made famous by Frank Mir, one of the first heavyweights in MMA to really have good jiu-jitsu. Played a lot off his back. I think it was his second fight in the UFC. He meets Petey Williams. Petey Williams famous for head kicking Mark Coleman, of course. But the Mir Lock's an interesting one because it comes off the overhook. So this is the overhook, hold on, here. How Mir has his left arm wrapped over Petey Williams' right. In a jiu-jitsu context, they tell you never to put your hands on the mat because you're giving up the free overhook. And good guys can hold you there. It starts to set up triangles because once you're holding this overhook, you can start attacking this hand and trying to kick your legs either around it or through the elbow and triangling in that way. You can start hitting omoplatas. You can start moving to a butterfly guard and trying to sweep. Overhook control, pretty good. Certainly beats sitting there with the guy, keeping his hands on your biceps and then just hitting you with short elbows. But as you can see, I like that. I like that how Mir peels this hand off here. Goes straight up to the fingers. Classic wrestling stuff. Go up and get the collar tie. In fact, in the gloves, probably works even better. But Colby Covington did that really well. Right here, you can see that no matter how hard Frank squeezes in whatever direction, there's not anything there. He's not going to break that arm. You'll see boxers do this from time to time. Mike Tyson did it to Botha. Tried to break his arm, but didn't really have anything because as long as that elbow is along the line of your body, is down next to your ribs, you're just going to be pulling against a bone, which you're never going to break. Unless you're Frank using your cup on Tim Sylvia's forearm. It's in the course of trying to slip out of this overhook that Petey Williams is going to give up the Mir Lock. So here we are, slips his elbow out, Frank gets on his side, knee shield in front there. Look at the pressure on that, it's insane. A couple of things about the finish. Frank's got a knee shield here. He opened his guard to put something in front of Petey. If Frank just kept him in closed guard, there wouldn't have been an awful lot of pressure on that arm. But as you can see, he's able to open up his whole body here to wreck that shoulder and elbow. Not a lot Petey can do. Does not like that, has to tap. Like I said, the Mir Lock exists because people make a choice, and it's sort of the incorrect one. When you want to slip out of an overhook, bringing this elbow to the inside is necessary to that, but you do need to do it in a certain way. Here's the greatest heavyweight of all time, Fedor Emelianenko. On top. We'll switch to red for pride. On top. Underneath him is Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, probably the greatest guard in heavyweight history. And this fight's really notable because Fedor sort of came out of nowhere. Nog's the champion. Fedor jumps into the place where Nog is most dangerous, his guard. You can see Nog's got the overhook here. It's kind of a loose one, but he's going to them throughout the fight. Fedor trained for this, and what he did was he'd sit in Nogueira's guard, he'd wait for Nogueira to get a grip, he'd strip the grip and punch immediately, and it worked really well. There's some great footage of him training with Roman Zensov for this fight, where he's just letting Zensov get grips and then stripping them and punching immediately. And they're training in like a community hall somewhere. They've got like puzzle mats out. I want you to watch what he does here. Boom, right. He slipped his elbow out, but at no point was he at risk of getting Mir locked. So if we do it real slowly, I want you to notice that he's gone thumb down. So his elbow's up here. If you take your arm out of the overhook and your elbow comes in, you give them the opportunity at the Mir lock. If you point your thumb down and you come with your elbow high like Fedor's done here, no opportunity for a Mir lock. One more time from the top. Elbow high. Starts clubbing him with punches because that was the theme of this fight. Another example here. Here's a good one. There, look. See how his palm is facing out? The ungloved part of his fist is here. His thumb is that way. that means that his elbow is facing this way. It's not here where pressure from this side will buckle it in. Boom. Let's do that again. And he snacks him a couple of times and he goes right back into the overhook. This is the thing. He kept giving Nogueira grips and then kept taking them away. So if you watch P.T. Williams again, the elbow comes inside. There. He tries to pull his elbow towards him rather than leaning away and pulling it up with the thumb down. You can see that his thumb's out here like this. And so he gets murked. So the Mir Lock exists as something that you have to sort of make a mistake to have it happen. There's quite a funny example from the other day here. Women's super heavy in, is this the Pan Ams? This lass punches an underhook on the far side away from us. There. And you can already see that this lass has started pulling it in with the overhook. So the first lass jumps guard and she's already getting Mir Locked from inside her own guard. That elbow's being pulled all the way across. She's locked her hands to try and relieve the pressure there. But once your elbow's on the inside, it's kind of like when a Kimura is behind your back. You're sort of stuck. And her reaction is like, yeah, I didn't know that could happen. And to be fair, I've never seen it from that position either. This is John Gutter hitting a really good one from butterfly guard. Gets the overhook. Opponent pulls the elbow in. You saw him there. His hands facing the other way to what we want. You'd want your thumb pointing down and your elbow coming out high. Instead, he points his palm towards him. Pulls his elbow in right there. As you can see, like, it's a position you give up. His elbow's there. That was terrible. His elbow's there. It's a position you give up. It's not necessarily something that they can manufacture. You'll see guys get the overhook and then get on their side. Mika Galvao does this a lot. But even if they do that, if you pull your arm out the way that we just talked about with Fedor, thumb down, you're giving them the shot at the omoplata. You're not giving them the possibility of the Mir Lock. And part of the battle is always to get something in front of their body so that you can extend away. So the person making this famous now is a girl called Adele Fornarino, who's an Australian grappler. This is her here on the bottom. And the secret to her success is that she's just got a really good aggressive guard, and her opponents make the mistakes because they don't want her to have the overhook. She has other good attacks from the overhook that aren't the Mir Lock, and then they fall into it by accident. So that girl went for a toe hold, ends up getting pulled into closed guard. Double wrist control here by Adele Fornarino. What you're going to see is she's going to push that left wrist in, threatening sort of a triangle, but also just wrecking this girl's posture, pulling her in. Now this is good. This person, Bianca Basilio, doesn't have her right hand on the mat at the moment. It's just inside between their chests. So Fornarino's gripped across her back to try and keep her posture down, and she's starting to attack this hand. You can get triangles and things from here, but in a second, there. As soon as that hand hit the floor, Fornarino wrapped the overhook. So in slow-mo, breaks the posture, grabs over the back, arm comes out, wraps the overhook. There. And immediately, because she knew she didn't want to give up the overhook, she started pulling that arm back. You can see that the elbow is already coming to the inside here. She lifts Fornarino up with her. But her elbow's already kinked in there. And here, Adele's trying to finish it while hanging on her from closed guard. It's hard because once your elbow's inside, like, there's no way that she's turning her thumb down now. Ends up tapping. Very impressive victory. I think that was the finals. This is Adele in the trials. Unfortunately, the ref sort of obscures this one. She gets the overhook there, as you can see. She turns on her side here, which is a great way of encouraging the opponent to take their elbow out. Tries again in a second. But you can see there, that's bad. Hand here. Elbow inside there. Very bad position. Adele's got a foot on the hip here, so she's able to create some space and really put some stank on it. And yeah, she quite badly hurts the other lass. But the reason that works is because it's all in a bigger context of Adele's overhook closed guard and her closed guard generally. But when you get an overhook from closed guard, you want to be fighting the hand on the opposite side and threatening the triangle. So she has the overhook here. Can't see it, damn. But on the side furthest from us, she has the overhook, which is why they're chest to chest almost. She's using this hand to fight the opponent's hand on this side and to get her knee inside. Once she's got her knee inside here, she can start trying to kick through on triangles, or she can go over the hand, depending. I can't remember what she does here, but I think she just pushes it in and jumps it in the end. This is good. Her overhooking arm here has linked up with her other hand, and she's using 2-on-1 on that hand. That's really good. Really good for butterfly sweeping. Really good for triangles. Jumps over the elbow, or over the wrist rather, gets her triangle, locks it up, and that's a wrap. So that's why people are pulling their elbows out against her, because she's constantly threatening the triangles from the overhook to begin with. So here's another Mir Lock in action from her. Pulls closed guard, starts attacking her opponent's left arm with a razor arm lock there. In the course of this hand is going to end up on the floor, which is the, in jiu-jitsu you're constantly told, don't put your hands on the floor, don't put your hands on the floor. But as soon as you start attacking people aggressively, it can just happen. There, it's on the floor, wraps the overhook. So this one's interesting because she's holding Adele's head on the other side, and she's keeping her head on Adele's overhooking shoulder, which can limit the extent to which you can get the Mir Lock / arm crank off. Adele's going to keep trying to move her feet in front of Ip. Look at that, that's not good. In fact, that's very bad. When your elbow comes this far inside of your hand, that's not good. But this one's an interesting one because in the course of trying to get her feet in front of Ip to create pressure on this and to be able to extend her body further away, she ends up jumping up into armbar position for a really bad one. Great stuff. So when you're playing the closed guard with the overhook, there is normally a moment where you try to get on your side, and it's in that moment that the opponent's elbow can slip in front of your body. You can't do much when their elbow's on the mat next to you. You can do a lot when their elbow starts tracking in front of your body. Here's Frank Mir demonstrating it for the Warrior Collective. Good sight and good video. There you go, gets on his side, and that's when the elbow comes in front of the body, and that's when the vulnerability happens. So one interesting thing is that the half guard, particularly the knee shield half guard, can be better suited to get in the Mir Lock. Here, Paul Craig's on the bottom with the beard. Jamal Hill's on the top, being Jamal Hill. Hill's right arm is in the overhook. He's in the half guard, not the full guard. Craig turns onto his side, and the elbow comes in front of the body, as you can see here. Knee comes in deeper as he turns onto his side properly. Creates a frame to hold Jamal Hill's body back while this arm's being kinked in, and he's able to threaten him pretty well. But ultimately, Jamal slips his arm out. Like that though, that's to do with the direction of the elbow. If he starts turning his elbow back up, he exposes himself to the omoplata, and he actually got almost straight arm locked on that as Craig was kicking his leg over. The crazy part is, Jamal comes back on top, immediately puts himself back in the half guard with the underhook or Craig's overhook. This is what you want in half guard. You want an underhook, but you don't want them controlling this wrist. You don't want that knee coming in as a knee shield. And the knee shield's the really tricky part, because as soon as the knee gets in there, you can see this is about to go this way in front of Craig's body again because of the additional distance. Yep, almost gets it again there, and here's where it gets cool. He switches onto the other arm instead. Genuinely one of the coolest things Paul Craig's ever done. Breaks Jamal Hill's arm, and the rest is history. So to demonstrate that again from the knee shield, we've got the knee shield king, the boy, Craig Jones here, against Chael Sonnen in, I think this is the Absolute division in ADCC. This was back when Craig was just making his breakthrough. But he's attacking a Kimura on the offside arm. This is a very MMA thing to do, by the way, just hugging the hips here. A lot of the time with good half guard players, they'll just attack this arm until something happens with this arm. When you bring it across, they arm drag it, or they look for knee levers, or they get the underhook and start coming up. But because Craig's attacking this very hard to get Kimura there, Chael starts going across for the one-on-one or the Dagestani handcuff there. Craig whips his arm back over and grabs the overhook, straightening his left arm along the line of his body on the bottom there to peel off Sonnen's Dagestani handcuff attempt. But Sonnen's going to do the automatic thing, and he brought his elbow to the inside. Craig's got the knee shield in. Elbow's gone inside of the shoulder. Starting to get hairy. And Chael's able to get out of it. It happens a couple more times in this match, but obviously Craig won that with I think it was a heel hook, outside heel hook. He gets in on the legs. This was when Craig was doing a ton of attack the upper body to make the guy posture up or rip his arms out, and then scoop in underneath him. So if we jump forward a bit, Craig's on the off arm there, goes back to the overhook here, overhook, forces Chael's arm in a second, boom, starts attacking that, Chael postures up, and that is what Craig used to look for all the time. This was when people had worked out he was good on legs, so then he just attacked the upper body until they sit up, and there is Craig's hold to attack. In on the legs, frames off the face, gets in, does his little X guard sort of entry here. He only did this a couple of times, but it was cool because it was like you could adapt that to be IBJJF legal. Gets the heel hook and gets the tap. So let's talk Jon Jones' standing Mir Lock. He debuted it, as far as I know, against Glover Teixeira. Here it is, it's nasty. But he also used it against Daniel Cormier in their first fight and against Alexander Gustafsson in their second fight. What I really like, well, there's several things I really like about it, but when you're facing a big puncher, ruining his right arm, always a good shout. Most of the time, Jones hits this on the opponent's right arm. The fact that it can be snapped up really easily off the opponent just digging underhooks, which everyone does against Jon Jones. So here, Glover Teixeira's caught a leg off a kick, moves in on Jon Jones. Jones is controlling his wrists, pulls him up into the overhook on this side here. And you'll notice already, Teixeira's elbow is being pinched in there already. Teixeira's elbow is already between the two of their bodies. With this, with the standing arm crank generally, the standing Mir Lock, whatever you want to call it, it's this space, and this is going to be a theme with Jon Jones' dirty boxing as well, clinch striking. This space is what's really important. When this elbow gets stuck out here in this space, there's room to whip it across. Gnarly. So if we jump forward to Jones Cormier 1, I want you to notice something here. Decent right hand by Cormier. As Jones comes round, he's grabbed the overhook on Cormier's right arm, which is kind of important generally. In this fight, he spent a ton of time just focusing on Cormier's right arm in the clinches because Cormier wants to hold and throw right uppercuts, just like he did against Alexander Gustafsson. He landed loads of them in the first 2 rounds of this fight. But as he circles round, notice where Jones's head goes. Here, he's looking into the side of Cormier's jaw. And that, look where Cormier's elbow is, already forward of his body, and that means Jones can start cranking it inwards that way. Take it back up to real speed. There, beautiful. Bit of clinch fighting here. Cormier snaps him down briefly. Jones peels the wrist off. Jones has got the whizzer on his right side, on the side over here, sorry, the overhook, whatever we're calling it today. Cormier's left elbow gets away from his body and into that space between them. Bang, another attempt at the little arm crank there. Now, Cormier's corner go crazy asking for short underhooks. You can hear them throughout this fight going, short underhook, short underhook. Rare Cormier body kick here. But what you're going to see is, look at Cormier's underhook here. He's keeping his elbow real close to his body now. Jones can't... Well, first you'll notice that Jones's arm is further down. They're messing around with wrists on the other side. Cormier's holding his glove at certain points too. But Jones needs his arm wrapped above the elbow to do this move. And Cormier's elbow needs to be in front of his body. So by keeping his elbow tight and the underhook short, he's relatively safe. Ooh, gets elbowed in the head there though. And a bit of glove holding there on the inside from DC as well. The clinch fighting in this fight is absolutely sensational. I love it. But the really great thing about Jones's arm crank is that it ties in with his infighting along the cage. So to explain his infighting on the cage, I've talked about this loads over the years in various articles, but have a look at Jones's head and hips. Glover Teixeira is straight upright. I'm going to be that dude from Twitter who does the lines like this. There we go. But, look at Jones's body. His hips are well back from his head. He's in a proper stance. He's got one foot behind the other. He can knee. He can break free and punch. And you'll see that in a second. But yeah, he's maintained a stance, whereas he's pushing Glover Teixeira up out of his stance. No matter who you are, no matter how hard you hit better from in your stance with your feet staggered than you do with your feet level. And there's a lot of stuff in common with Henry Armstrong, who won the, I believe it was featherweight, lightweight and welterweight titles in boxing and went up to middleweight and lost a close decision. Which, if you know boxing divisions, that's absolutely insane. And what he did was he just stuck his head to the opponent's chest and pushed them out of their stance constantly, hitting them with little shots to the inside. like this. So here's a good sequence. Firstly, oh my god, Jones poked his eyes so much in this fight. He's constantly just got splayed fingers going right towards Glover's eyes. So if Glover steps in, oh, I'm sorry, I just had my hands out, and he ran onto it. It's crazy going back and watching Jones's career, how much that worked, and how until they brought in the strict definition that your hand, if it's open, had to be upright, or fingers up to the ceiling, he was just getting away with murder. Oblique kick, back kick. Here we go, moves in with a good elbow. Now this is nice. Double wrist control here. And asymmetrical gripping, which is another cool thing that John Danaher's always on about. Look, he's got thumb down on this hand and thumb up on this hand. Awesome shoulder strike there. Lets Glover have the underhook here. And look, the space, the underhook, Glover's underhook is forward of his body. Or rather, his elbow is forward of his body. Jones's overhook is above the elbow. He's basically free to whip it through now. And he does. Lovely. And again, right back to head on him. Freeing his hands, trying to hit more. And the main thing you'll get from like Jones's infighting, which he really doesn't use as much nowadays. This is like the best fight for it. But I want you to look how hard it is for Glover Teixeira to hit him, to even hit him basically, when his head is up against Glover Teixeira. Look at Jones here. Look, he's got his feet back here, so he can throw knees up here. He can turn over elbows with his hands here. He can pull his head back an elbow at any point, like Paul Felder did to Charles Oliveira. If Glover does get his hands free to punch, he's going to be trying to throw like uppercuts against his own body. And as soon as you start turning your shoulders, that just doesn't work very well. So look at that. He Tyson Furies himself here. Boom, hits himself in the eye. One more time. Boom. But it's really hard to hit someone if their head is against your chest. Not like down against your chest, like head into your collarbone. Even this one in a second where Jones gets caught coming in, he's basically on top of him as he punches. Makes it very hard. And then he lands a good elbow there. But as I was saying, this posture here, with the head post here and the hips back, means that Jones is always able to strike, and it also means that the opponent tends to reach out towards him with the underhook. Going to jump over to Shuto for a second. Shinya Aoki back in the day recorded probably the only submission I've ever seen by Wakigatami, standing Wakigatami. This is an old jiu-jitsu, like Japanese jiu-jitsu, aikijitsu, judo technique, where it's called a winding arm lock, because you pull the opponent's arm across your body and break it with your midsection, like that. And the sound on this is horrible. Highly recommend looking it up on YouTube. He's like, oh, I'm surprised that I broke his arm when I whipped myself around. But you'll notice again, it's his opponent's elbow coming away from his body that allows Aoki to get this. Bang. He did an instructional of this, and I can't speak Japanese very well, but look, grabs that arm with the cross grip, pulls it out, and winds it across the body. It was his opponent's overhook drifting out into that space between the two bodies that allowed him to extend and get that armbar. So it's a common principle. If you can get the guy's elbows away from his body, he's a little bit more vulnerable. Well, he's considerably more vulnerable to arm locks of all kinds. So Jones creates vulnerability in the arm with his head post, and also creates ability to strike and move the opponent with his head post as well. So I think people give the Glover Teixeira fight all the credit on the arm crank. That's the one they remember. But against DC, it was really useful. And his whole job in the DC fight was to shut down DC's right hand, particularly in the clinches. I'll show you a couple of clips of DC just roughing him up with the right uppercut, the bus driver uppercut. See, Jones gets on top of it there after taking it. Here's a couple that he takes just for free. But he's obviously trained for it, or at least he's realised that it's a problem. Because if you watch here, DC hits him with the uppercut, and then immediately he's on top of that hand again. And then as the rounds progressed, he was just on it all the time. Look, won't let go of it. And then when he does, it's to elbow. Whole fight, holding the right hand with his left hand, and then elbowing with his left elbow. Same again there. Same again there. So a lot of this head posting on the fence is in service of getting your hips away from the opponent so you can knee well, but also it has the added effect of weakening any grips they have, unless they follow you with the really deep underhook, and then obviously they expose themselves to that standing Mir Lock. But for many years before infighting was effectively banned in boxing, This was the standard way to break the clinch. If you go watch old footage of Rocky Marciano versus Ezard Charles, every time Rocky Marciano gets clinched, he puts his head underneath Ezard Charles' jaw, gets his hips back and just swims his arms out. If you want to watch another example in MMA, Nate Diaz, not anywhere near the same level of wrestler as Jon Jones, against Conor McGregor in their second fight, constantly posting the head along the fence, getting his hips back, freeing his arms, and then banging the body from either side. Oh, that's the crotch, but you know what I mean. You'll also remember that Jon Jones got famous for the spinning back elbow, which he does by posting his head, freeing his arms, because he can once he's in this position, freeing his arms and then spinning into the elbow. The final string to that bow is the locked hands double, which Greg Jackson believes is like the most useful technique in MMA history. Boom. His lads just ran through the regional scene with that. So let's go from the top of the sequence. Foreshadowing head kick in fight number 1 there. Clinch, elbow, head post, knee to the body, pushing him back. Look, Jones's hips always behind his head. Cormier keeping everything short, locks his hands, double leg. Now to do that to a wrestler of Daniel Cormier's caliber, obviously Jon Jones is a freak athlete, but wrestling in the cage, it's very different to wrestling. Because wrestling has no boundary that you get stuck up against. Once you're here, there's not really a sprawl, there's not really any funk you can do. You're just getting pulled towards him with your legs locked together. But anyway, I reckon that'll do us for today. I don't own any of this footage, it all belongs to the UFC or Flow Grappling. This video isn't monetized, I made it for fun. Now I'm off to do a preview podcast of UFC 309 for the Patreon boys, and then I'll see you Monday for the regular podcast. Cheers.